Hi everybody, it's Levi. We are back in the Nerd Cave for day 28 of our 30-day video challenge, and today I want to expand on something I mentioned a couple videos back about open source software and explain how I use it in my everyday life, why I use it, and what the advantages are. So here we go. Why do I use Linux instead of Windows or Mac OS? I don't use Mac OS because I haven't owned an Apple computer for a lot of years. Now my wife has one. I can use them. I use them in college as a design tool. It's great hardware. I'm not here to argue with anybody about Mac versus Windows or any of that. They're a little pricey for me, but I am not a design professional. If you are a graphic artist, a video producer, a video editor, some of those types of things, then it's hard to argue with the Mac computers. They're great. I don't use Windows because Windows has had a couple of issues with their updates in the last year or so. And more importantly, Windows doesn't give me, I don't feel, enough control and flexibility in how I use it. Windows is Windows, and if it works for you, it's great. It's well supported. It has a huge share of the market. You're not going to go wrong using Windows on your computer. I use Linux because there are a bunch of different variations of Linux, each of which has a particular focus or a slightly different way of solving the same kinds of problems. So I've tried dozens and dozens of different versions of Linux, and there are some great websites like DistroHopper that will allow you to go out there and either put in a set of criteria for yourself, and it will tell you which distributions of Linux might make sense for you, or you can just hit the random button and it will give you one. Linux as an operating system on your computer is really powerful. It's really flexible. There are some distributions of Linux that are absolutely beginner friendly. They work very similar to Windows, and they look great and have all of the features you need. Now you might ask, if it looks so much like Windows, why would I switch? The reason you would switch is that the maintenance and the expansion of Linux and the security of Linux are just handled differently. It's handled by quite literally millions of people around the world who all have fundamentally the same goal, which is to produce something that makes sense, that helps. It's also backed up by some very large companies like Canonical, who creates the Ubuntu version of Linux, IBM, Red Hat, even places like Motorola contribute to the Linux community. And what that means is you have, like I said, millions of people working on this piece of software, as opposed to thousands of people working for Microsoft keeping Windows up and running. An operating system is an incredibly complex piece of software, and the more eyeballs you have on it, the better. When there is a vulnerability discovered in some piece of Linux, it gets fixed almost immediately, and that fix gets distributed very quickly. So I want to make a couple suggestions for folks that are interested in trying out Linux. One of the really wonderful things you can do with Linux is download it and create a live CD or live USB. And what that means is you can run your computer on Linux from that USB drive or from that DVD drive without replacing anything on your computer. And then you turn your computer off. When you turn it back on, it's back to your old Windows machine. So it's a good opportunity for you to try it out. There's two versions of Linux that, if you are a complete beginner to this and you want to just get started, are really well documented. They're super easy to use. They're super easy to install and try out. The first one is Mint Linux. Mint has been around for a little while now. It is based on Ubuntu, which you're going to hear Ubuntu a lot when you start looking around in the Linux world. There are just a bunch of different variations of Ubuntu. Mint is one that focuses on looking really good and providing an experience that is similar to Windows or even Mac OS if you want it to be, so that people who haven't used Linux in the past can sort of ease their way into it without such a jarring transition. So Mint is great. It is a wonderful place to start. The second one that you might try out, which is actually, I think, a little bit lighter in resources, is Peppermint Linux. So Mint and Peppermint. Peppermint is also, I believe, based on Ubuntu, but it focuses a little bit more on the ability to run on slower hardware or older computers. It still looks great. It still, from a user standpoint, works a lot like your Windows interface. You hit the Windows button, the menu pops up, and you can go find the programs you want. The other thing that these two distributions do, and that a lot of distributions do, is they come pre-installed with a lot of software that is open source that you can download for free on your own if you want, but they come installed with basically all of the tools that an average computer user is going to need. So the Office suite that I mentioned before, an image editor, a video player, a web browser. So the basic tools you need to use a computer the way most consumers would use it every day. I highly encourage you to check out Linux as an alternative, particularly for those of you who have an older laptop that just takes 5 minutes to boot up and it can't install Windows updates anymore. Finding a Linux distribution that will fit on there and run well on it gives you that computer back. We'll be back tomorrow with another video. If you guys have questions, comments, criticisms, hit me up at NerdButler on social media. You can check out nerdbutler.com for more content, or you can email me directly, levi@nerdbutler.com. I will be back again tomorrow. It's been so much fun talking to you all. Check out Linux, check out open source software, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. Bye.